Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. It's Yvonne from Ginger Chick Rehab. I'm so glad to have you back today. And if you're new here and visiting my channel for the first time, welcome. I do lots of DIYs, trash to treasure, furniture flips with my husband Chris, and thrifting adventures to fit into the farmhouse decor. So I am so excited. It's that time of the month again. It is Sunday Funday. Now Sunday Funday is where I co-host with Yanni and Diane of Decor Easy. And we have an open collab. That means that all the creators, all the YouTube creators can throw on any type of video they want, be it a DIY, be it a thrift haul, or just something that they'd like to show off. This is just a relaxed playlist. So if you have not checked out Diane and Yanni's channel, please flip over and check their channel out. They do some wonderful DIYs, some wonderful farmhouse decor. And right now they have an awesome playlist going on for the Christmas season. So on my Sunday Funday video, I usually bring you my thrift haul makeovers of what I've done throughout the month of thrift hauls, but unfortunately due to being ill with the yucky anyway, so I was unable to go thrifting. But luckily, as a thrifter, I do kind of have a hoard. So I had some medium items. Some of them I did show in previous thrift hauls that I just never got to. And then there were other items that I had never shown. So this is what today's video is all about. It is still a, let's say, a thrifted find makeover, just not part of me doing a thrift haul on most of the items. So I hope you enjoy this type of content. So let's get right in on the stockpile of items that I have. Some shown in thrift hauls and others I just kind of set to the side because I consider them sort of like medium items. So these are the items that have been in my hoard, that one of those I've been meaning to get to kind of things. So I thought this was the perfect opportunity to show off these items. Oh, don't you just love this little bread box? I hope that it's a bread box and it's not a child's toy. I absolutely thought that it was sweet. Look at that, a barn bread box. And then these little type of cubbies sell well for me when I give them new life. So I am never intimidated by that engraved writing or the yellow of this little jewelry box. And I am just drawn to these candelabras, these lamps. I cannot pass these up. I just love giving these items new life. And I really do think that they fit into anybody's decor. So on top of this barn bread box, it was missing a lot of these little peggy things, and now I can see why, because I could just pull them out. So I'm just going to fill in those holes. I don't have a dowel to make all those that is that small, but other than that, it is in really good shape. So what made me think that this was a bread box as I'm removing all the hardware is that it had one of those magnetic stoppers that stops the door from opening on its own. So I'm going to market it as a bread box. I just think that it's adorable. And living in a farming community, I think somebody would be happy to have this. So along with removing any hardware on any of the pieces, I go through and remove any price tags, any unwanted tags. And I know I say this in all my makeover videos, but as a reseller, I think that it's best to not paint over a tag. Nothing says a flipped item like painting over a tag. So most of the time when I am doing a clock, I cannot remove the face, but I was happy to find out that with a couple little screws, I could remove this clock face and be able to paint this separately. You just want to be doing this very gingerly. You don't want to disturb the little hands, the mechanism, and just kind of remember, if you're doing this yourself, how the pieces and parts go back together. There's just something about these old wooden lanterns that I just absolutely love. I don't know what it is. I love painting them white or black and just giving them new life. And they sell. Not one of my best sellers, but they do sell. When I was removing the tape off these, I remembered in my hoard I had this random candlestick that was missing its top for $1.09. I had thrifted it, and what a perfect opportunity to get to use it to make this one a little bit taller. So I had thrifted this round piece of plywood for $1.09 and this little bowl for $2.09, and so my idea here was to make a riser out of it. $1.09 for a piece of wood is a great price. So I never really pass up any type of candlestick. I always can find a use for it. But what I'm showing you here is how I take a heat gun, or you could take a blow dryer just to heat up that wax that's left from a candle that was in there, and then I just wipe it out as soon as it melts, and then I use my KRUD cutter to clean it, and you can now paint over it. And actually I'll be cleaning all my pieces now that I've got them taken apart, the tags off, all assessed of what I'm going to do with them with my KRUD cutter. And then when I was cleaning this candelabra, I noticed that there was some roughness, some unevenness on that wood at the bottom. So I'm just trying to get in there with some 220 sandpaper. And as you see, as I was doing the sanding, it was bumping off some of that finish. So also that's another good reason to thoroughly go through your pieces and parts, because when I was doing it, it looked completely fine, but when I started cleaning it, that's when I felt that unevenness, and then when I was cleaning it, some of that finish was coming off. So this is another reason why you just don't start off painting, that you need to assess your pieces. So now I'm just going to be drilling, or Chris is going to be drilling a hole in the bottom of this little candle so I can put that other candlestick base on it. And then for this little blue candlestick, somebody had done some detail painting on it, so I'm just taking the 220 sandpaper and sanding that smooth. So there again, when I was starting to clean this item, this decorative piece, I noticed that the base was kind of wonky, so all I needed to do was re-glue this so that it would be nice and secure. So I'm just taking some of my Star Bond glue, which is nice because with the accelerator, you don't have to wait for the glue to dry. And then I needed to sand off these little hearts on this cute little paper plate holder just to make sure that they were nice and smooth. Then along with this round piece of wood and these 2 cutting boards, I'm going to make sure that those are sanded nice and smooth also. And then with this little decorative jewelry box, I'm going to call it, I need to sand off this hand painted job also so it's nice and smooth. If you don't, and you go to paint it and distress it, you think that it's smooth to the touch, that it's not going to show through that paint, but trust me, it is raised, it will show through. So I noticed when I was doing this recipe box that bottom was completely, I could just pull it off, and so I decided I was, instead of stapling it on, I was going to remove it before painting. That would just give me a nice, cleaner, crisp paint job. So to give this an updated look, I'm just using some Durham water putty. I absolutely love this stuff. You just take a little bit of the powder and a little bit of water, and you make it into a consistency paste of your choice. And then you can use it as a wood filler, or it's a wood filler. And I can fill in that word that's been engraved, that recipe word, on the front of this recipe box and just give it an updated look. I absolutely love this. Is one of my favorite things I love to do with this Durham water putty. And then since I have some of that Durham water putty left over, I needed to fill in where I took all those little pegs off anyway, so I'm just using the leftover on that cute little barn. Now I did let this sit for quite a few hours to make sure that it was thoroughly dry. It actually dries really well for me, so now I'm just taking the orbital sander and I'm just going to spend the time sanding it. Like it says, it is rock hard, and they are right, but it also is very sandable. I'll use the orbital sander on the top of this barn also. So this cute little barn is not real wood, it is that particle board. So what I'm doing here, I find that the Rust-Oleum paint and primer in one and the spray can adheres the best to this kind of material. And so what I'm doing is I've taken it into our spray room where the ventilation is, and I can have a mask on, and I am especially trying to get the inside of this. And actually this would be the cleanest paint job that I could probably get on this kind of item anyway, using a spray can of paint. Now for my other items, I am just doing an undercoat on these of this black onyx, this right off the shelf paint that I get at Walmart. As I was going along in my painting, I realized like, oh, I probably should get the can of spray paint and spray this. This has all those little holes and crevices that would be really hard to get in with a paintbrush. So I just go grab the can of Rust-Oleum paint. So now all my pieces have their first coat of black onyx on them. Just the way that I'm going to be distressing these pieces, I wanted the black to show through. For those couple items that, including this little barn, that I use that spray can of paint on, I find it's best to seal it in with the polycrylic. That just keeps that paint on there, and when I go to distress it, that black will stay on there. Sometimes most of the time that Rust-Oleum will make kind of a chalky mess, so I just seal it in and make sure that it stays and is good adhered with this polycrylic as a top coat or in between coat before I move on to my next color. So for the items that I want to be white, I am using my go-to Kills paint and primer. I get it right off the shelf at Walmart. There's no mixing required, so it's just a grab and go. So for this little item that has all those little details, just for an undercoat, I will be giving it a top coat of the Kills, but I'm just going to spray it using the Rust-Oleum in the flat white just to get into all those little holes. And then along with using it on this little barn just to give it a nice base coat of white. But unfortunately I ran out of my white spray paint, so when I went to flip this over, I did have to take a detail brush and go in and get all those little holes. Now I have most of my items that I want painted white, you know, you have to flip-flop in this angle, that angle. Along with this little bread box, I had ran out of the spray paint, like I said. Plus, I didn't want the white to be in the inside of the bread box, so I knew I was going to just do the front of this separately anyway. And there, again, I needed that little detail brush to get into those little shiplappy crevices, but that was okay. And as you see, I completely taped it off so that I wasn't getting any paint where I didn't want paint in the inside. So after cleaning the hardware using some Dawn dish soap and some hot water and then letting them dry, I'm now giving them a coat of the Rust-Oleum paint and primer in the flat black to give them a new life. And after doing both sides of the hardware, I seal and protect that Rust-Oleum spray paint in with some polycrylic. Now that I have all the coats of paint to cover the way that I'd like them to, including the black items, I can now proceed on to sanding and distressing my pieces. So for most of my pieces, I will be using a 220 sandpaper, and then I'm just pushing down on those sharp edges just to bring out some detail. And then on the smooth part, I just lightly use my hand just to sand off any brush strokes you feel so everything is nice and smooth. Then for the few pieces like this round, I will just be using the orbital sander with a 220 grit just to really smooth this piece out and then kind of tip it off to the side to get a little bit distressing around those edges. Now when it comes to distressing these little slats on this barn, I really have to go in gingerly. This isn't like real wood, so it won't distress the same, so I don't need to push as hard to make some of that black show through, but I do need to push into those crevices just to get it to show that detail. Now I'm going to be removing the tape that I had taped off the area where I didn't want to get painted white, and while I have the sandpaper out, I'm going to run it across that, because when you have that tape, it gets that hard crusty edge of where the paint builds up along the tape. I just want that to be nice and smooth. So now for my black pieces, I will need a little bit stronger of sandpaper. I'm using a 120 grit because I polycrylic these. I really have to push hard and a little bit stronger grit to get it down to that natural wood where I want to see my distressing. And instead of going over the entire piece with the sandpaper, I will take steel wool, and that'll just knock down that shininess and give it kind of opens up that paint, so when I go to wax it, the wax has something to grab onto. So now that I made all that sanding dust, what a mess, I use the air compressor to get rid of all that dust off the items. So now I have a couple items that I want to put a stencil on, and I want to use this one for that paper plate holder. I thought that was very appropriate. Then on my Silhouette Cameo, I'm also using this font to type out the word storage for the cute little storage box. And since this is a cursive font, I need to remember to go in and weld it together so it cuts it all in one wording and not separately. On this grouping of items, I seem to have a lot that I want to do some kind of a detail on, especially on this clock. I envisioned when I did this clock black that I would put a grain sack stripe all the way down through the middle of it. So that's what I'm doing here, is I'm finding center to put my first piece of tape to make sure that I am nice and centered. And then for my stripe color, I am using the Apple Barrel Multi-Use in white and then applying it using a makeup sponge that I get at the dollar store. So for the two items that I am stenciling on, I am just taking that Apple Barrel paint and I'm using that as a base color. This will help seal in those edges and give me nice crisp lines. For this white round, I envisioned a gray sack stripe on this also, this is probably a little bit easier to see than what that clock is. So the same thing here, I'm just measuring out to make sure that my first piece of tape is nice and centered. Then I'll take another piece of masking tape and butt it up to each side, one on the left, one on the right, and then I will remove the tape in the middle, and I will be going down the little bit of the lip of the side also, and that will be where my first paint stripe will go. Now for this one, I choose to use the Multi-Use Apple Barrel in black. So I'm still using a makeup sponge that I get at the Dollar Tree to apply the paint, and I'm doing that dry technique where there's just a little bit of paint on and then just kind of dabbing a little bit off. You don't want to have too much paint that you're kind of pushing it underneath the tape. You just want to have a light little tapping motion just to get the paint on, and I will do a couple coats to get the black that I'm looking for. Now that my white is dry, I'm just going to be going over this with the Apple Barrel in black. And after doing 2 coats of the black to get the darkness that I want, I will be removing the vinyl using a blow dryer. This just helps kind of heat up that vinyl and release that sticky, so what I have previously painted does not come off with the vinyl. Then I'll do that same technique of using the blow dryer to heat up the masking tape. This is where I've done my second stripes, where I've overlapped it on the previously black paint. I'm one, just helping dry that paint, and 2, I'm going to be using it to help release that sticky. So there again, I'm not taking off the paint that I've already previously painted with the stickiness of the masking tape. Though I love to do the buffalo check, I saw my friend Margie on Reclaimed by Ramsey use a stencil for this, so I was like, oh, I'm going to order me one of these. So I ordered this off Amazon. I think she got hers off of Jamie Ray Vintage, so I wanted to give this a try on the top of this little cutting board that I'm going to be making into a riser. And I actually found this very simple to use. I'm just using the Apple Barrel in white and a makeup sponge with just a little bit of paint on it and just kind of trying to hold it steady. So now for my white pieces, I'm going to be using a protective wax on them. I like this Varathane finishing wax. I will not put it on the black. This kind of wax does not mix with the black. It kind of makes a chalkiness. I use the Waverly Antiquing wax for that, but this is just a wipe on and I wipe off. I absolutely love this. Is just an extra step, even though I finish it off with Kills paint and primer. This is just an extra step to protect that white paint. Since I was able to remove the bottom of that storage box, and you can kind of tell where the nail holes were, I thought it was kind of nice to just put a little bit of this Dollar Tree contact paper on the bottom of it. I like to do this in my dresser, my furniture pieces anyway, and I thought this would be a nice little surprise. And then using the stapling tool, I will reattach this to the bottom of the storage box. So now it's time to start replacing all the hardware along with these hinges, trying to line them up. And I have a lot of little pieces that had lots of little hinges, so remembering which ones went on which items. So if you like the white of this, you could just put some polycrylic on the top and leave it as is. I like to antique these a little bit, so I like to use this Waverly Antiquing wax, and I don't have to sand and distress the white of these pieces like I do when I have the black stencil, because the Waverly wax kind of distresses it a little bit anyway, and if I wanted it to stay crisper and not be distressed, I would have polycrylic over the top of it and then did the antiquing wax. It's just a personal preference of which
what you're looking for. So now that I have this antiquing wax out, we have a few legs in our hoard. These are actually ones that were turned by a guy that is in our antique mall that we decided to shop local. We do what we can, and so long as it's cost efficient for reselling, and so we bought some of his legs. So they are natural raw wood, and so I'm just taking that Waverly antiquing wax on the bottom of these just to give them a little bit of color. You could stain them, you could paint them. This is just the look I'm going for these, is just using the antiquing wax on them. After I let the antiquing wax dry, that's why I was not putting it on the top of where I was going to be gluing down. And on these are just little pegs that I had gotten off one of those accordions that were just a weird little shape of them all. And so what I'm doing here is just using those as the bottom legs. And I wanted this two-tone look, so these are exactly what they were. So all I'm doing is using a little bit of the Star Bond and the medium glue and putting them in the four corners, trying to eyeball that they are nice and even. And then I can spray them with this accelerator, which dries them in like 15 seconds. So this is nice. I still let them sit for an hour or so before moving them, just to make sure that they were good and adhered. And then I did that on these other two that I wanted to make into risers too. These are the four legs, two sets that we'd gotten from the gentleman at our antique mall. I like the unique shape, and I had gotten something similar like that from Lowe's, but I found his was just about the same price as what I was paying for him at Lowe's.
So much for watching today's video. And did you have a favorite? Did you have a favorite thrift? I just absolutely love doing flipped items. I just absolutely can envision them when I thrift them, just being able to give them new life. So give me a quick comment of what your favorite item was, or would you have passed on anything? And as always, don't forget to hit that like button. And if you're new to my channel, again, please consider hitting that subscription button. My cats are very needy for some reason when I am videoing. It's like all attention on them. So of course Squirt's on my lap and Peach is going around the tripod. So if you see the tripod jiggling, it's because Peach was rubbing up against it, trying to figure out how everybody can be on my lap. So again, I thank you so much for watching today's video, and if you're part of my YouTube family, that has helped my channel grow. Just by you watching my video, that helps YouTube know that you like my kind of content and giving me a quick comment and a like. And if you're new to my channel, please again consider hitting that subscription button along with the notification bell so you know when I've uploaded a new video.